The dust of Trinity Falls settled on Abigail Mercer's small boots as she stood, barely reaching 5 feet tall, outside the general store in the summer of 1868. The Texas settlement had grown since the end of the Civil War, but Abigail, known to most as Little Abby, had grown accustomed to the sideways glances and whispered comments about her diminutive stature. At 22, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that belied the hardships she'd endured, not just for her size, but for being a woman alone in the West. "Miss Mercer, your order's ready," called Mr. Holloway from inside the store. Though I reckon you'll need help carrying these flour sacks. They might outweigh you." His laughter echoed against the wooden walls, joined by the chuckles of the men lounging on the porch. "I manage just fine, Mr. Holloway," Abigail replied, her voice soft but resolute. She'd learned long ago that showing weakness invited more ridicule. The small homestead she'd inherited from her father sat 3 miles outside town, close, enough to reach on horseback, far enough to feel the weight of isolation. As she prepared to load her purchases onto her small wagon, a commotion erupted down the dusty main street. A group of Comanche men, led by a tall figure whose presence seemed to command the very air around him, rode slowly into town. While relations had improved somewhat in recent years, the tension was palpable as conversations hushed and hands instinctively moved toward holstered weapons. The leader dismounted with fluid grace that contrasted with his imposing height. Standing at least 6'5", his dark hair hung in 2 long braids, adorned with small silver ornaments that caught the sunlight. Unlike the others who remained on horseback, he approached the general store with deliberate steps. "The Comanche delegation is here to speak with Sheriff Randall," he announced in clear, slightly accented English. "We come in peace under the terms of the treaty." Mr. Holloway nodded nervously. "Sheriff's at his office, Nahimana." The tall Comanche's eyes swept across the porch, settling briefly on Abigail. Something flickered in his expression, not the usual pity or amusement her size typically evoked, but a kind of recognition. Abigail felt her cheeks warm as she looked away, busying herself with her packages. "Miss," he said suddenly, "those sacks look heavy." Before she could protest, he effortlessly lifted the flour sacks and placed them in her wagon. Up close, the contrast between them was almost comical, her barely reaching his chest. Now him having to bend considerably to help her. "Thank you, Mr." she began. "Nahimana," he offered. "Well, it means mystic in your tongue, though there is nothing mystical about common courtesy." The hint of a smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Abigail Mercer," she replied, "though most call me Little Abby," interrupted. One of the men on the porch with a snicker, a pocket-sized spinster, Nahimana's face darkened. "Oh, in my culture, Mr. Holloway, we believe a person's stature is measured by their spirit, not their height." He turned back to Abigail. "Miss Mercer, then, safe journey home." As he rejoined his delegation, Abigail couldn't help but wonder about this man who had shown her more respect in a brief encounter than most had in years. The following weeks brought unseasonable rains that turned the roads to mud and kept Abigail homebound. Her small cabin, while sturdy enough, had begun to show signs of wear that her father would have easily repaired. The roof leaked in 3 places, and the corral fence needed reinforcing before winter. She had managed to keep her small herd of 8 cattle fed and healthy, but the physical demands of ranch work constantly tested the limits of her strength. One particularly stormy evening, as Abigail struggled to secure a loose shutter that threatened to tear free in the wind, as she heard hoofbeats approaching. Fear clutched at her heart. Visitors after dark rarely brought good news, especially to a woman living alone. She reached for her father's old shotgun just as a knock sounded at the door. Lightning illuminated the porch, revealing Nahimana's tall figure, rain streaming from his buckskin clothing. "Miss Mercer," he called over the howling wind. "I was passing and saw your light. Your chimney's damaged. Smoke's backing up." Reluctantly, she opened the door. "Mr. Nahimana, what brings you out in such weather?" "My band has made temporary camp near the river. I was returning from speaking with Sheriff Randall about hunting rights." He paused, glancing at the shotgun she still held. "And I mean no harm." Abigail lowered the weapon, embarrassed. "I'm sorry, it's just a woman alone must be cautious." "I understand." He remained on the porch, respectfully not entering without invitation. "Your roof is letting in. Water at the southwest corner, and that shutter won't hold through the night without proper fixing," Abigail sighed. "I'm aware things have been challenging since my father passed." Nahimana nodded solemnly. "Oh, do my people value self-reliance, Miss Mercer, but we also understand that some tasks require help." He gestured toward the roof. "I could repair it for you. Now, if you'll allow it." Pride warred with practicality in Abigail's mind. She'd endured the townspeople's charity, always accompanied by patronizing remarks about her limitations, for too long to accept help easily. Yet the rain was already forming puddles on her floor. "Why would you help me?" she asked directly. "We barely know each other." Nahimana considered her question seriously. "Because when I was young, before I grew tall, I was small. For my age, the other boys called me Bird Bones and said I would never become a warrior." His eyes met hers with unexpected understanding. "I learned that what others see as weakness can become strength, with time and determination. But sometimes, even the strongest need assistance." Something in his words resonated with her deeply. Abigail stepped back from the doorway. "I would appreciate the help, Mr. Nahimana. There are tools in the shed." Working methodically, despite the downpour, Nahimana repaired the chimney, secured the shutters, and patched the worst of the roof leaks. Inside, Abigail prepared coffee and heated leftover stew, setting it on the table as he finally came in, soaked but satisfied with his work. "It will hold until proper repairs can be made," he said, accepting the steaming cup gratefully. But your cabin needs more attention before winter." As they sat across from each other, Abigail noticed how carefully he maneuvered in her small home, designed for someone of her stature. The chairs, the table height, everything that usually made others uncomfortable seemed to amuse rather than offend him. "Do you built this place to your measure?" he observed. "Clever." "My father did," she corrected. "He adapted everything after my mother died. Said there was no sense in me struggling to reach what should be within grasp." Nahimana nodded approvingly. "A wise man. My people believe our dwellings should reflect those who live within them." He hesitated. "Miss Mercer, I have a proposal that may sound unusual." Abigail tensed slightly. "Our band will remain near Trinity Falls through harvest time, according to our agreement with the town. I'm skilled at building and repair. I could help restore your homestead properly, in exchange for something I need." "And what would that be?" she asked cautiously. "Knowledge," he replied simply. "I wish to better understand the white man's farming methods. Your cattle are healthy despite the poor season. You grow crops I've seen fail on other lands. These are skills my people need as the buffalo grow scarcer and our traditional ways become harder to maintain." Abigail was stunned by the unexpected request. "You want me to teach you farming and ranching in exchange for repairs? Is it not a fair trade, your knowledge for my labor?" The proposition was practical, beneficial to both, and utterly scandalous by Trinity Falls standards. A single woman hosting a Comanche man at her homestead would set tongues wagging faster than a prairie fire. "The town would not approve," she said finally. Nahimana's expression remained impassive. "Does the town feed your cattle or mend your roof? You live outside their boundaries already, Miss Mercer, both physically and in how they regard—" "Oh, His perception struck uncomfortably close to truth. Abigail had always existed on the periphery of acceptance in Trinity Falls, too small, too independent, too determined to manage her father's ranch instead of seeking a husband, as everyone constantly suggested. "I'll consider it," she said. "Finally, return tomorrow, if the weather permits." After Nahimana left, Abigail sat long into the night, listening to the rain against the newly secured roof. For the first time in months, no water dripped onto her floor. It was a small comfort, but a meaningful one, and it had come from the most unexpected source. Morning brought clear skies and resolution. When Nahimana returned, Abigail had her answer ready. "I accept your proposal with conditions," she stated firmly. "You will work only during daylight hours. We will maintain proper distance and behavior at all times. And if your people or mine object strongly enough to threaten either of, agree the arrangement ends immediately." Nahimana's face remained serious, but his eyes showed approval. "It's agreed. When do we begin?" "Now," Abigail replied. "I'll show you how we irrigate the vegetable garden, and then you can tell me what's wrong with my north fence that makes it keep failing." What began as a practical arrangement evolved, over the following weeks, into something neither had anticipated, a friendship built on mutual respect and shared challenges. Nahimana proved to be not only skilled with his hands, but keenly intelligent, adapting Abigail's farming techniques with innovations from his own culture. For her part, Abigail found herself learning as much as teaching about natural water conservation, planting methods that disturbed the soil less, and how to predict weather changes from subtle signs in nature. The physical transformation of the homestead was remarkable. Nahimana repaired the roof properly, reinforced the barn, and built storage shelves at perfect heights for Abigail's reach. Most significantly, he constructed a series of clever tools designed specifically for someone of her size. Longer handles with perfectly balanced leverage points that allowed her to accomplish tasks that had previously required exhausting effort. "Just my grandmother was small like you," he explained, as he demonstrated a modified hayfork. "She taught me that tools should serve the user, not force the user to serve them." Word of their unusual partnership inevitably reached Trinity Falls. Sheriff Randall rode out one afternoon, his expression torn between official concern and personal curiosity. "Miss Mercer," he began awkwardly, "there's been talk in town about your visitor." "Mr. Nahimana has been helping with repairs," Abigail replied calmly, continuing to hang laundry as they spoke. "In exchange for agricultural knowledge." The sheriff removed his hat, wiping his brow nervously. "Some folks are concerned about propriety, Miss Mercer. A single lady entertaining a—" he faltered. "A Comanche man," she finished for him. "Or is it that I'm entertaining anyone at all, Sheriff? The town seems to have decided long ago that little Abby would remain alone forever." Sheriff Randall had the grace to look embarrassed. "I'm just passing along concerns, miss. Reverend Phillips specifically mentioned Christian decency." Nahimana emerged from the barn, nodding respectfully to the sheriff. Perhaps the Reverend would prefer Miss Mercer's home fall into disrepair, or that she struggle alone with work that requires strength she doesn't possess. "That's not—" the sheriff began. "Sheriff Randall," Abigail interrupted firmly, "please inform the concerned citizens of Trinity Falls that my arrangement with Mr. Nahimana is both proper and necessary. I've managed this ranch alone for 3 years since my father's passing. Despite everyone's certainty that I couldn't, I don't intend to fail now because of narrow-minded gossip." After the sheriff departed, Nahimana regarded Abigail with newfound admiration. "You spoke with the courage of a war chief." "I spoke from frustration," she admitted. "They've never seen me as capable, only as little and in need of their protection or pity. Yet you've survived without either," he observed. Surviving isn't the same as thriving, Abigail replied softly. Before you came, I was merely enduring. As autumn approached, the homestead stood transformed. The garden yielded abundantly. The cattle were healthy, and the cabin was weatherproofed for the coming winter. But beyond the physical improvements, something more profound had changed. Abigail moved differently now, with confidence born from having the right tools and techniques for her size, rather than constantly adapting to a world built for taller people. Their daily routine had settled into comfortable familiarity. Mornings began with coffee shared on the porch. Planning the day's work. Abigail demonstrated seasonal farming tasks, while Nahimana continued making improvements to the property. They took midday meals together, exchanging stories of their childhoods and cultural traditions. By sunset, Nahimana would return to his people's camp, returning at dawn the next day. One evening, as they completed the last task of reinforcing the chicken coop, Abigail realized their arrangement had nearly reached its natural conclusion. The homestead repairs were virtually complete, and she had shared all the agricultural knowledge she possessed. Your people will be moving on. Soon, she said, voicing the uncomfortable truth they'd both avoided. Nahimana nodded, his expression unreadable in the fading light. The agreement with Trinity Falls ends with the harvest moon. We travel south before the first snow. A heavy silence fell between them, filled with unspoken thoughts. Abigail had known this day would come, had prepared herself for it, yet found herself unprepared for the hollow feeling that accompanied the reality. I have something for you, Nahimana said suddenly. He retrieved a bundle wrapped in soft leather from his saddlebag. A parting gift. Inside was a beautifully crafted miniature saddle, sized perfectly for someone of Abigail's proportions. The leather was tooled with intricate designs, the stirrups adjusted to her leg length. I noticed your discomfort with your father's old saddle, he explained. This will prevent the pain in your hips after long rides. Tears welled in Abigail's eyes as she ran her fingers over the careful craftsmanship. No one had ever created something so perfectly suited to her needs, something that acknowledged her difference without trying to change or apologize for it. It's beautiful, she whispered. I don't know how to thank you. There is no need, he replied. You have given me knowledge that will help my people adapt to changing times. That is worth more than any physical gift. The following morning, instead of their usual coffee on the porch, Abigail made a decision. She packed a small bag with provisions and saddled her horse with Nahimana's gift. I want to see your camp, she announced when he arrived, to meet your people and understand how they live. If I've taught you our ways, it seems only fair I learn something of yours before you leave. Surprise registered briefly on Nahimana's face before he nodded. My mother would welcome you. She has been curious about the small woman who knows cattle and growing things. The Comanche camp was nothing like Abigail had imagined from the fearsome tales told in town. Instead of the primitive conditions she'd been led to expect, she found a well-organized community with teepees arranged in family groupings. Children played together while women worked at various crafts. The atmosphere was one of industrious harmony rather than the savage disorder Trinity Falls gossip suggested. Nahimana's mother, Grey Dove, was a dignified elder whose welcoming smile transcended language barriers. Through Nahimana's translation, she expressed delight at meeting the woman who had taught her son new ways to grow food. She says, "You have the spirit of a tall tree in a small seed," Nahimana translated, a smile tugging at his lips. It is a high compliment among our people. Throughout the day, Abigail observed the community's interconnectedness, how tasks were shared, how children were collectively supervised, how the elderly were respected for their wisdom. She, witnessed a people fighting to maintain their identity while adapting to a changing world that increasingly left no room for their traditional ways. As evening approached, the band gathered around central fires for a shared meal. Nahimana sat beside Abigail, occasionally translating conversations or explaining customs. After the meal, an elder began speaking in the Comanche language, his weathered face animated as he gestured toward Nahimana and Abigail. "What is he saying?" she whispered. "He speaks of bridges between peoples," Nahimana replied quietly. "He says that understanding grows like a garden, seed by seed, season by season." Later, as Nahimana escorted her back toward her homestead under a canopy of stars, Abigail found herself reluctant for the journey to end. "Your people are nothing like what the townspeople describe," she observed. "And you are nothing like what my people expected of a white settler," he countered. "We are all more than the stories others tell about us." They rode in companionable silence until Abigail's cabin came into view, its outline dark against the night sky. The thought of returning to solitude after these weeks of partnership felt suddenly unbearable. "Nahimana," she said, drawing her horse to a stop, "what happens after your people move south? Will you return to Trinity Falls territory?" He studied her face in the moonlight. "That depends on many things. The treaties are fragile. The hunting grows poorer each season. My people must follow the buffalo herds further south and west. And what of your own wishes?" she pressed. "If you could choose your path." Nahimana dismounted, coming to stand beside her horse. Even with her mounted, she barely reached his eye level. "If I could choose," he said carefully, "I would find a place where wisdom from both our peoples could take root together, where children might grow understanding both worlds." The implication hung in the air between them, unspoken, yet unmistakable. "People would never accept it," Abigail said softly, "neither yours nor mine." "Perhaps not today," he agreed, "but we have already built something neither would have believed possible." He gestured toward her homestead. "A place where your size and my heritage are strengths, not weaknesses." As they stood in the starlight, the impossible seemed momentarily within reach. Abigail had never dared imagine a future beyond her solitary existence on the homestead. Now, unexpected possibilities stretched before her like an unmapped territory. "I leave with my band in 3 days," Nahimana said finally. And then you must decide what future you wish to build, Abigail Mercer, as must I." The following days passed in a blur of activity as Abigail methodically prepared the homestead for winter. She worked with renewed purpose, testing each improvement Nahimana had made, ensuring she could manage alone if necessary. Yet with each task, she found herself questioning whether she wanted to. On the morning of Nahimana's departure, Abigail rose before dawn. She dressed carefully in her best skirt and jacket, then packed 2 bags, one large, one small. The large one contained winter provisions, dried meat, preserved vegetables, medicines, and tools. The smaller held personal items, her mother's wedding ring, her father's pocket watch, and the deed to the homestead. When Nahimana arrived, for their final farewell, he found Abigail sitting on the porch, the packed bags beside her. "Oh, you're prepared for winter?" he observed, noting the larger bag. "I'm prepared for a journey," she corrected, standing to face him. "If the offer still stands?" Confusion crossed his features. "What offer?" "To build something new, something that draws from both our strengths." Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. "I've lived my entire life with people telling me what I cannot do because of my size. You've shown me that the right tools and knowledge can overcome those limitations." Nahimana's expression remained guarded. "What are you proposing, Abigail?" "I'm proposing we continue what we've started," she said simply. "Not here, and where both our peoples would make it impossible. Somewhere new, where we can apply what we've learned together. The path would not be easy, he warned. Even far from here, a Comanche man and a white woman, nothing worthwhile. Comes easily, she interrupted. My father taught me that. Your people taught you the same, I think. Nahimana stepped closer, towering above her, yet somehow never making her feel small. There is land to the west, near the mountains. My cousin's band has settled there, learning to farm alongside, raising horses. They have made peace with nearby settlers who value skill over origin. Would they accept us? Abigail asked. They would accept what we can contribute, he replied. The rest would depend on us. The decision crystallized in that moment, not from desperation or romance, but from the clear-eyed recognition of compatible spirits who had found in each other what society had denied them both. Respect without conditions, strength without domination, and possibility without predetermined limitations. Then I choose that path, Abigail said. If you'll have me as your partner, Nahimana's face broke into a rare, full smile. My people have a ceremony for such partnerships. It is simple but binding. As do mine, she replied, retrieving her mother's ring from the small bag, though I doubt either would recognize what we're building as traditional. He laughed, a sound Abigail had heard rarely, but treasured. Then perhaps we should create our own ceremony, one that honors both traditions while beginning. Something new. 3 days later, Sheriff Randall discovered a sealed letter nailed to Abigail Mercer's door. Inside was the deed to her property, legally transferred to the Trinity Falls School, along with instructions that the land's proceeds should fund education for children regardless of size, gender, or heritage. By then, Abigail and Nahimana were already traveling west with his band, toward the mountains where ancient forests met open plains. They carried with them seeds for crops, plans for tools adapted to different bodies and abilities, and the shared knowledge of two cultures that conventional wisdom insisted could never understand each other. Years later, travelers crossing the Western Territories occasionally spoke of an unusual homestead nestled in a fertile valley, a place where a remarkably small woman and a towering Comanche man had created something extraordinary. The buildings combined traditional Comanche design with innovative adaptations, doorways of different heights side by side, tools crafted for hands of various sizes, and gardens that blended native plants with cultivated crops in harmonious productivity. Children from multiple backgrounds learned there that differences in size, origin, or ability were not limitations, but variations to be accommodated through clever design and mutual respect. The small woman, they said, moved through her domain with the confidence of someone for whom everything was finally within reach. The tall man worked alongside her with the careful grace of someone who had found his rightful place in the world. Together, they had built what neither could have created alone, not just a home measured to fit them both, but a testament to the human capacity to recognize value beyond conventional expectations. In doing so, they crafted a legacy taller than the highest mountain and more enduring than any structure made by human hands.